Committee members, the clerk has advised me that we have a quorum and those appearing virtually have been sound tested. And Ms. Cirillo is online virtually. So with that, I would call, I would call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 93 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is beginning its study, Intergenerational Volunteerism. Today's meeting has taken place in a hybrid format, meaning some members and witnesses are appearing in the room and appearing virtually. I would like to review a few items. You have the option of choosing to speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation is available in the room by using your headset and selecting the appropriate language. Virtually, please click on the world icon on the bottom of your surface and choose the official language of your choice. If there's an interruption in translation services, please get my attention and we'll suspend while it is being corrected. You can, those virtually, use the raised hand icon to get my attention. In the room, simply raise your hand. I would like to remind members to keep in the room, to keep their headset, their earpiece away from the in-room mics for the safety of the hearing of the translators. So today we begin the study. We have in the today witnesses from the Central Okanagan Food Bank. We have Trevor Moss, Chief Executive Officer, appearing virtually. In the room, we have Megan Conway with Volunteer Canada. And before I am going to begin with their opening comments, I want to, for the benefit of the committee, you will recall last week at one meeting on a point of order from Ms. Gray, at which I said I would take it under consideration, which was my position as it related to moving motions during your speaking time allocation. In making, so at the last meeting, a question was asked regarding the fact that the clock is not stopped when a member has the floor to question witnesses, and during the intervention, he or she moves a motion. Thus, if the time provided for questioning the witness has expired at the end of the debate on the motion, the floor is given to the next member who wishes to question the witness. In making the decision I'm about to give, I was guided by a few principles. First of all, members have complete discretion to do whatever they want with the time allotted to them. They can question witnesses and move motions. Secondly, this decision in no way alters the right of members to debate the motion in accordance with the established rules. I've decided to do this in order to give all members, which I have a responsibility to, as many opportunities as possible to ask questions. It's a question of fairness, so that everyone can use their speaking time as they see fit. So in fairness to all the members around the table, I want everyone to be able to exercise their right to speak. In short, everyone does what they like with their speaking time. And when the time is up, we move on to the next member, unless the committee is debating a motion. In that case, anyone can speak with no time limit. This decision does not deprive any member of their right to ask questions or move motions. With that, committee members, I will move to opening comments from, who do we have first? We have Mr. Moss. Mr. Moss, you have the floor for 5 minutes or less. Thank you.
Thank you, esteemed members of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities, for providing us with the opportunity to share our insights on intergenerational volunteerism. Intergenerational volunteerism is not just a philosophy. It is a daily reality in the heart of our operations. The Central Okanagan Food Bank serves as a meeting ground where individuals from all walks of life converge to make a collective impact. Through these interactions, connections are forged, relationships are built, and the diversity that enriches our community is celebrated. Each generation brings a unique perspective and skill set to volunteer positions that impacts their fellow volunteers, the organization they are working with, and the community at large. It's this diversity that evokes real and impactful change in our communities, and we see this daily. Youth volunteerism brings a dynamic and fresh perspective to organizations like us through their energy, enthusiasm, and willingness to embrace innovation. Their open-mindedness and adaptability make them valuable assets as they often approach challenges with creativity and a willingness to try new approaches. Additionally, young volunteers tend to be tech savvy, bringing a digital fluency that can enhance organizational efficiency and outreach efforts. The passion and idealism of youth can inject new life into projects and initiatives, inspiring others and fostering a positive organizational culture. Their diverse backgrounds and experiences contribute to a rich tapestry of ideas and solutions. Moreover, young volunteers often have a deep connection to contemporary issues, enabling organizations to stay relevant and responsive to evolving societal needs. For young adults, volunteering offers opportunities to develop and enhance their professional skills. They can gain experience in leadership, communication, project management, and teamwork, which are valuable in both personal and professional spheres. Additionally, interpersonal skills such as empathy, cultural sensitivity, and adaptability are often honed through volunteer experiences, contributing to well-rounded personal development. As middle-aged adults engage in volunteer work, they bring a wealth of expertise and a strong sense of responsibility toward community development. This age group often finds fulfillment in applying their skills in novel ways, contributing not only to the success of the volunteer organization, but also to their personal growth. Volunteering becomes a platform for continuous learning and a means to diversify their skill set, creating a positive ripple effect that extends beyond individual well-being. The impact of this intergenerational collaboration on our senior volunteers is profound. Beyond the tangible contributions to the Central Okanagan Food Bank, seniors experience enhanced socialization and a sense of purpose. Engaging in volunteer activities has shown to reduce feelings of isolation, improve mental well-being, and fostering a strong sense of belonging. Moreover, the act of volunteering contributes to the physical well-being of our senior volunteers, who make up impressively 60% of our overall volunteer base. It promotes mobility, encourages an active lifestyle, and reinforces the idea that age is not a barrier to meaningful community involvement. Seniors, through dedicated service, not only receive essential support, but also find joy in connections and empowerment that come with being an integral part of our volunteer family. As seniors bring their wealth of experience, they become essential mentors, offering valuable guidance to our younger volunteers. This collaboration helps our youth develop necessary skills like problem solving, communication, and leadership, crucial for their personal and professional growth. This intergenerational teamwork fosters empathy and understanding among our young volunteers, acting as a bridge that nurtures a sense of community and dispels generational gaps. The intergenerational aspect of volunteering not only enhances the impact on community projects, but also forges connections that withstand the test of time. Whether it's the exuberance of youth, the strategic acumen of middle-aged individuals, or the seasoned wisdom of elders, each age cohort complements the others, creating a holistic and sustainable approach to community service. In this way, volunteering becomes a powerful tool for fostering unity, understanding, and a shared commitment to build a better, more compassionate society. Volunteerism is a transformative force that not only strengthens community, but also enriches the lives of individuals. By recognizing its value and embracing collaboration across generations, we lay the foundation for a more inclusive, resilient, and compassionate society. Together, we can create a legacy of positive change that transcends age boundaries and fosters a spirit of cooperation for the betterment of all. In the sphere of volunteerism, we observe
Ross,
that dynamic relationships.
Could you bring your comments to a close, please?
Yeah. In the sphere of volunteerism, we observe the dynamic relationship between generations where the wisdom of our seniors meet the enthusiasm of our youth. Each generation, through their dedication, becomes a beacon, illuminating a path for those who follow. Together, we forge a legacy of compassion, resilience, and community strength, with each generation inspiring the next in an unbroken chain of goodwill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. We'll now go to Ms. Megan Conway for 5 minutes or less. Ms. Conway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for organizing this important study on intergenerational volunteering. My name is Dr. Megan Conway, and I'm the President and CEO of Volunteer Canada. We're a registered charity that provides national leadership and expertise on volunteerism to advance the participation, quality, and diversity of volunteer experiences. We represent 1,100 members across the country to support them in their efforts to strengthen Canada's volunteering infrastructure. This study comes at a critical juncture for Canada's social infrastructure. We're facing a growing loneliness epidemic alongside an intensifying crisis in volunteering and participation. Combined, these challenges deplete the ability of communities to support those in need and threaten our health, well-being, economy, resilience, and the collective fabric of our nation. Intergenerational volunteering holds the power to address these mutually reinforcing challenges. It is a powerful avenue for building belonging and connection, offering positive multiplier effects for our communities. But to deliver intergenerational initiatives at the scale required to address these complex challenges, we need to build a stronger support infrastructure and capacity. Today, I'll share more about the interlinked nature of the loneliness epidemic and the crisis in volunteering and participation, and offer insights as to how intergenerational volunteering can help counter these challenges. I'll also present a series of recommendations for how the Government of Canada can contribute to building the infrastructure necessary to effectively promote and support intergenerational volunteering. The COVID-19 pandemic eroded our social connections and led to a significant rise in social isolation and loneliness. Just a few weeks ago, the World Health Organization declared loneliness a public global health concern. Combined, social isolation and loneliness have profound consequences for our public health systems and threaten the social capital and sense of belonging that keep our communities connected and productive. In Canada, 1 in 5 Canadians now identifies as lonely, with certain groups disproportionately affected, including newcomers, Indigenous peoples, those living on low incomes, and people with disabilities or chronic health conditions. Ageism and social isolation are closely associated, leaving older adults and youth particularly at risk. Since 2015, rates of loneliness have increased by 67% among women aged 65 to 74 and 45% among men in the same age bracket. Today, an estimated 30% of older adults in Canada are at risk of social isolation, with this number expected to increase as the proportion of older adults multiplies in the coming years. The risk is compounded for older adults with intersecting risk factors such as living alone, having compromised health, living with low income, or living in a rural area. Our youth are also grappling with loneliness. Nearly 1 in 4 Canadian youth between the ages of 15 to 24 report feeling lonely, with higher rates of loneliness among young women. Given that the feeling of belonging and connection with others is fundamental to healthy youth development, this is deeply concerning. Shifting patterns of social connection extend the way that people engage in community, including through volunteering. While volunteering has historically served as a safeguard for the support systems we rely upon it and as an avenue for social connection, there are signs that volunteering and participation are no longer a given. Charitable and nonprofit organizations across the country are reporting a shortage of new volunteers, challenges with volunteer retention, and an inability to fill long-term roles. The pandemic has exacerbated these issues, with many older adults who historically contributed significantly to volunteering not returning to their roles due to health concerns. Youth, despite their willingness to participate and make a difference, face persistent barriers to volunteering, such as not being asked to participate, time constraints, ageism, and financial limitations. We have an opportunity to reinvigorate the virtuous cycle between volunteering and social connection. We know that individuals who volunteer are more connected to their communities and experience higher levels of belonging and inclusion, and that the benefits of volunteering are even greater among those who are socially connected. Intergenerational volunteering amplifies these benefits. When different generations come together, they nurture friendship, understanding, and compassion, reduce ageism, and strengthen community in the process. There is a robust evidence base pointing to the benefit of intergenerational volunteering, including enhanced well-being and mental health, skills transfer, and increased cross-cultural competency across generations. Currently, Canada lacks the infrastructure necessary to promote and support purpose-fit and inclusive intergenerational programming and services. For example, effective intergenerational programs require staff training and support, but insufficient investment in volunteer management capacity limits organizations in these areas. Moreover, there's a substantial data gap in understanding how older adult and youth engagement in volunteering, especially when it comes to different ethnocultural groups, intersectional identities, religious affiliation, generational trends, and rural versus youth volunteering. These gaps are indicative of a more widespread issue across the volunteering landscape, many of which stem from the lack of a cohesive and integrated national approach to promoting, supporting, and facilitating volunteering. In 2019, a special Senate Committee on Canada's charitable sector recognized many of these persistent problems and called for the federal government to implement a national volunteer strategy. Volunteer Canada was identified as the leader in this effort and is interested in collaborating with a diverse network of stakeholders. To this end, we have 3 recommendations we wish to make, one of which is that the Government of Canada commit to engaging in strategically investing in the development and implementation of a national volunteer action strategy, that it invests in building a robust evidence base on intergenerational volunteering, and that it deepens and expands its investment in long-term high-impact intergenerational volunteering initiatives that increase the number and diversity of participants in intergenerational volunteering. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening statement, and I'm happy to answer any further questions that the committee might have.
Excuse me, Dr. Conway, actually a very interesting factual synopsis of what's happening in the country. I experience it quite a bit in my constituency amongst those demographics. So thank you. With that, we'll go to begin with Ms. Gray for 6 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here and for the work that you do. My first questions are for Trevor Moss at the Central Okanagan Food Bank. We hear stories more of working families needing to access the food bank and food banks. And are you seeing this? And then also, can you provide a brief rundown of the demographics and sociographics of the clients that you serve? And has there been a change over the last 10 years?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is immense need in our region. And over the last 9 months, we've seen a 32% increase in reference to that. And what we are projecting is another 100% increase in the next 3 to 4 months because of inflation. And so this is something that we are seeing continually. And the newest members that are, or newest clients that are coming in, some of the biggest pockets are seniors, immigrants, and single individuals, where this is predominantly the ones that are coming in that they're struggling the most. And so we couldn't do this in what we're doing without our volunteer base, which is 500 volunteers, and they actually give over 30,000 hours to us to pull off this in our 2 locations in West Kelowna and Kelowna.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that you said that you're expecting a 100% increase in food bank usage over the next 3 to 4 months due to inflation?
Well, we're seeing projections. Yeah, these are projections, but what we're seeing is the curve is continually going up. And now with the cost of living, interest rates, this is what we're seeing. The pressing need is huge, especially in the last 4 weeks. It's just skyrocketing. So we are concerned for the future.
Are you aware of any cases where there would be individuals that used to donate to your organization and or volunteer, and now they're actually having to come in as clients?
Yes, we're seeing that often, and many people are referring or letting us know that. Also, our physical donations has dropped over 50% in reference to food drives, in reference to those situations. So yes, that is a common experience. And just last week, we had a 91-year-old lady that came into the food bank for the first time because she just couldn't make it and she was on a fixed income.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. These are really shocking numbers that you're giving, actually, when you're talking about donations being down and yet the usage being so much greater. I'm sure it's creating a lot of challenges for your organization trying to serve the community. And I know that you're doing all that you can, and you do such really good work. Are you finding has there been a shift in the demographics, specifically in the age, because this is about intergenerational? Have you seen a shift in different individuals that might be coming in to volunteer, and would they have maybe different reasons? We've seen in some cases where there's been some reports of where people just don't have the time anymore because they're having to work more. We're seeing reports of seniors having to go back to work in order to just pay for basic necessities. So are you seeing a shift where people maybe used to have the time and want to, but they just can't because they're having to, get that second job or having to go back to work? Are those any of the stories that you're hearing?
Yeah, I think the three stories that come to my mind, one is seniors because of their fixed incomes. So they have to go and get more occasional jobs to actually meet the growing need. The other one is more in reference to our youth because they need, the money for education, for schooling, those types of things. And then the other area is in the area of immigration. And that's another area that we are just seeing that people can't volunteer as much. And working families. This is the highest thing we're seeing as well is working families are coming in more and more, and they have less to give, whereas one spouse maybe was working. Now two of them need to, and that's where we're seeing a drop off as well.
Thank you. One of the other things that we had seen reports out where people would like to volunteer, or maybe they've had to reduce volunteering because of costs of transportation, specifically with the cost of gas. And so do you have, are you seeing volunteers or people wanting to volunteer that maybe can't just because of the transportation needs getting to and from locations? Is that something that you're hearing at all?
Yes, that is something that we are hearing in reference to volunteerism. Absolutely, that is the case because we're hearing that more and more. The number one request from our food bank right now is bus tickets. And the other thing that we've had to do is we've had to create satellite locations in our area for our clients because they do not have the money to get on the bus to actually come and get food, which is tragic indeed. And this is some of the barriers that people are encountering day to day.
Thank you. We've only got about 20 seconds here left. So is there any final words that you'd like to comment on here before we sign off here?
The only thing that we are seeing in reference to volunteerism is the relational poverty piece. And I think the pandemic did a real number on this. We have also presented a positive piece that charities can really help people come together, weave it together, and people are moving out of isolation. But the two biggest challenges right now is isolation and putting food on the table. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity just to share some insight on the daily workings of the Central Okanagan Food Bank and the clients we serve.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Mr. Van Bynen for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm really looking forward to what we might learn from this study. I can say that as a volunteer for the food bank in Newmarket Aurora, I understand the dilemma that one of our guests is experiencing. On the bright side, though, just last week we celebrated that one of our churches raised £50,000 for the local food bank. And so it's good to see that there is a voluntary response to some of the concerns that we have here. I'm very interested in hearing more from our guest from the Volunteer Canada, Megan. We did have a conversation earlier. And given that this is a national study, I'm looking forward to your contributions. You had some recommendations, but time limitations had you go through that quickly. Could you expand on your recommendations, please?
Sure, thank you. In 2019, the Senate produced a report, Catalyst for Change, and the number one recommendation in that report is that Canada invest in the development of a national volunteering action strategy. Over the last 3 years, since the pandemic has hit, we've seen significant impacts to volunteering infrastructure across the country. In the 2022 November Business Conditions Survey from Statistics Canada, 65% of organizations surveyed indicated that they've had difficulty recruiting or retaining volunteers. That has meant that of those surveyed, 35% of organizations have had to reduce or close programs altogether. We have a crisis in volunteerism right now where we're seeing people not able to return to volunteering for a variety of different reasons. Seniors have identified challenges related to health and safety. They've historically been the largest demographic in the country to contribute the most number of hours. That's a significant concern that charities such as the Food Bank, Meals on Wheels, other direct service organizations are grappling with. So we believe it's time for there to be a national volunteer action strategy. That's one significant recommendation we would make. We also believe it's important to build out more robust data and evidence about the benefits of intergenerational volunteerism, about what the landscape of volunteerism looks like in the country at this point, given significant technological shifts across the country, and that we believe volunteerism is a direct way of addressing the loneliness epidemic that we're facing in the country.
Thank you. Now, you'd mentioned the need for a national volunteer strategy. What would the objectives be? My concern is that our volunteers, the ones that are stable over a longer period of time, are aging out on us. And so how do we engage getting youth more actively involved, and what would the target be?
I think one of the significant concerns that we've seen is that young people often don't feel like they've been asked to participate in community. They feel like it is a domain that is for perhaps an older demographic, and we think that there's great advantages to bringing older people and younger people together in volunteering. We've recently identified through some research that the landscape of intergenerational volunteering programs across the country is very, very chaotic and disparate. So individuals that are really advancing intergenerational initiatives across the country are often themselves aging out and older, and they lack the kinds of organizational infrastructure necessary. Back to your question about youth specifically, though, I think asking youth is critical. Supporting youth with any kind of honorarium relative to their travel costs is important because they are experiencing costs relative to participation, and recognizing that youth themselves have skills, whether they be technological skills, different kinds of design, for instance, design thinking skills that are new and cutting edge examples of ways of solving complex problems. I think youth bring different skills and capacity to the table. Older adults also have the perspective of wisdom, and bringing those two demographics together, I think, holds huge promise. So I think there's an opportunity to re-engage youth and build a culture of service across this country that we haven't seen in many decades.
An observation that I've received is that the more senior volunteers are longer term as opposed to youth being more project oriented, and then so more frequent projects. Is there any way that we could shift that perspective, or is that the study that you're looking for?
I think we need to understand what the picture of volunteerism looks like across diverse demographics. We have very little data or evidence that speaks to what diverse ethnocultural communities, what their models of participation look like, for instance. I've been informed that across Indigenous languages, there is not a word for volunteering. However, we know that Indigenous communities and individuals in Indigenous communities participate significantly. And so I think there's a way in which we could be developing diverse models that are much more future-focused around volunteerism and participation that will serve our current context rather than the context of 50 or 60 years ago. I think back about my grandmother, who was a hospital auxiliary volunteer. She did tremendous work in the community, raised significant funds. But that generation of volunteers has sadly aged out, and we need to think about new models of participation that are going to be more resonant and durable for the long term.
Thank Thank you. So what should the main criterion for the federal government programming that would encourage intergenerational volunteering?
The World Health Organization has identified a number of criteria for effective, high-impact intergenerational volunteering programs. Some of the criteria include things like involving participants in the design of those programs, making them inclusive, having them be universal, basing them on the concept of friendship, which is, I think, a very interesting concept these days when we think about how disconnected and polarized we've become, recognizing that friendship and the notion of relational connection is really critical. Having them be durable and over the long term with a significant investment in their sustainability, I think, is critical. As I've indicated, individuals age out and may no longer have the capacity to really invest in that kind of work. And thinking about principles of equality is also important, I think, in the design of those kinds of programs.
You mentioned...
Madame Chabot, vous pour 6 minutes.
Madame Chabot, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Good morning. Thank you to our witnesses. My first questions are for Mr. Moss. Congratulations. I think that you gave a fair overview of volunteerism and its challenges, both for young people and elder people. But I would like to ask you the following question, because the study deals with the not just the advantages of volunteerism, but how we can promote and encourage it. So do you have any suggestions on promoting and encouraging volunteerism, which is the subject of our study?
Yeah, what we're seeing is number one, don't be afraid to ask. I think that's the biggest thing that we are finding in reference to the intergenerational gap. We are so thankful for our seniors. The other thing that we are finding is when volunteers, no matter what age, when they come into our doors, I think one of the biggest things we are realizing is that we are expressing our thanks. And it's not just a project, it's not just a task, but it's about whoever's coming in, especially youth and young adults. There's huge studies out there showing about the isolation piece. Our goal is to create this community, this culture that actually gives back to them as well. And what we're seeing is that they're starting to press in a little more. I'm not saying it's not challenging. I'm not saying that they're flooding our doors, but what we are doing is we're making certain that they almost feel like it's like a place called home, where they're valued, they're appreciated. The other thing that we are trying to do is, and we mentioned it, is in the area of technology. We're really trying to create that through social media platforms where they're actually being encouraged to come in and understand what their impact means and that they do have something to give and to make a difference.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Conway, I had the pleasure of meeting one of your members from Volunteer Canada. Well, essentially, they addressed us at HUMA committee, and I think that what you're recommending is what they explained. We need to have better data on volunteering, campaigns to encourage volunteering. And I say that because, well, thank you for your perspective and thank you for your commitment. I think it's absolutely essential. But we see that among youth, there is volunteering, but it's not of the same nature as the nearly full-time volunteering that we see among seniors or retired people who, quote unquote, have time on their hands. And in my riding, I have hundreds of organizations, and many of them rely on volunteering. So you are quite right to say that it is more difficult. Is there a crisis? And how can we look at things differently? We know that things have changed. People get involved in particular causes, but not full-time. How can the government of Canada play a role in this issue?
Thank you, Madame Chabot. I think There are a number of interconnected roles that the government might want to play. One of the things we've learned in our research is that Canadians have a deep desire to participate in their communities, but many of them lack the understanding or awareness of how to do so. There is a network of volunteer centers across the country. Those volunteer centers are deeply underfunded and lack the kinds of infrastructure needed to do their critical work in community. They indeed help amplify and communicate what volunteering opportunities exist across communities. So that would be one area of investment, would be to reinvest in volunteer centers and strengthen that network nationally. Secondly, I think the government could support the development and enhancement of white-labeled tools or resources that could be redeployed for different organizations in community that would support recognition, recruitment, and re-attracting volunteers to specific causes in community. Thirdly, I think that the government might invest in gathering better data about what the picture of volunteering looks like across communities and by diverse demographics. So we work closely with Statistics Canada, for instance, while there's an effort there to work across and gather data from diverse ethnocultural communities. I believe there's much more that could be done. And then the other piece that I would identify is that charities and nonprofits that are highly dependent on volunteer infrastructure lack core and sustainable funding to do their work effectively. Volunteer managers were the first positions that were cut during the pandemic. Those positions have not returned in those organizations. That requires an investment in strengthening the charitable and nonprofit sector across the country.
Costa?
Do I have any time left? Well, I'll give an example. In Quebec, there's the Federation for Volunteer Action Centres in Quebec. For example, there's a volunteer.ca. Well, I think that there is promotion there. So that's why I'm asking on a national level what support can be given what more support can be given to Quebec and the provinces in concrete terms from the federal government over the more long term.
Conway?
I know some provincial jurisdictions are investigating this, like the province of Quebec, like the province of Newfoundland, for instance, that are exploring ways of doing this. I think we're ending up with a bit of a fragmented province-by-province approach, and I think there is a leadership role here to elevate the issue nationally.
Thank you. Merci, Madame Chabot.
Thank you, Madame Chabot.
For 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I'm just going to get right to some questions around what the government can do in relation to programs that they're already running. So I guess if I could ask both witnesses this, and maybe Mr. Moss, we could start with you. The New Horizons, which is really focused at seniors, is there a way to modify that program to get some intergenerational connections? The Canada Service Corps, which is very much focused on youth, could we do more on the government side to help bring seniors into that program? And then the other one was volunteer awards. I'm just interested in some thoughts about how these programs or other current programs could be modified to make it a little bit more inclusive as it comes to intergenerational.
Yeah, I think
Zerillo,
some of the programs.
excuse me, Madame Zerillo, could you lift your mic a bit, the interpreters? Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Moss.
Yeah, I think in reference to some of the programs and even granting funding that you mentioned are critical to organizations, especially not-for-profits like ourselves. I think what we're experiencing is as you're fulfilling your mandate, the problem is for not-for-profits, we have to write grants all the time. It sucks up time, energy. We have to do reports. So I would love to be able to see this streamlined right across nationally, that there is very clear understanding where we can go and get those resources. We're still willing to, of course, apply for the funding, but I think it's important to keep those and to actually add more in, because I'll give you an example. Like, we have over 30,000 volunteer hours. We've equated that amount of money volunteer-wise as over $1 million. So if we can put some money into the infrastructure to connect to youth, middle age, and seniors, it's such an amazing give back to organizations, the country, and to people. So I would encourage that we continually would do that, and also be creative with our younger generation, how this unfolds, and maybe that's through summer jobs and grants. Another idea, it's not volunteerism. The summer grants is an amazing thing, but it's only 7 weeks. It should be for the full summer, and that helps impact as well. Maybe it's a bit of both, work and volunteerism, where students get both. So,
Great, thank you so much. And Ms. Ms. Conway.
Thank you. I think there are a number of things that that Volunteer Canada has done historically. We've worked with Canada Service Corps and New Horizons, for instance. We've recently received 3-year funding from an anonymous donor to establish a strategy to bring older adults back to volunteering and to develop an intergenerational volunteerism hub in Canada, similar to Generations United in the United States, for example. There are models in other jurisdictions that I think are high-impact, evidence-based models that are doing this work effectively well, addressing the loneliness gap and the participation crisis that we're seeing in communities. So one of the things I would also say government needs to consider is capacity challenges that exist across charities and nonprofits. So applying episodically for funding is great, but it means that there is often dips in funding or lack of continuity. So thinking about the ways and the ability for the government to really strengthen volunteerism, and how do we become a leading edge country that really invests in how and supporting people to participate, I think is mission critical for the government.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Moss, I wanted to go back to your comment about the bus passes and just some comments about food insecurity. So I wonder if there an opportunity for the federal government to be supporting this approach, which is bus passes to allow for transportation, or to have like a meal program or funding to entice volunteers to come because a meal is served.
Yeah, actually, that's the bus passing, is we're seeing this ongoing with our seniors, even younger volunteers, transportation, the cost of it, and as I mentioned, of course, our clients. So I think even to put some of those extra funding pieces into it, because transportation is a barrier. And I think that's an amazing idea in reference to helping that. So can you ask me, sorry, I forget the second part of your question.
And just about, I know a lot of times just a meal or having food available entices volunteers. Is there an opportunity for the federal government to be involved more in that part of organizations to entice volunteers through a meal?
It's interesting because they don't have a lot of money, but they're giving their time. So to give that one piece, like we tried to have a volunteer that actually one of their roles is to cook meals for our volunteers in the food bank. And the number one thing that comes back with a resounding, like, just thank you. So I actually love that idea where there would be sustainable funding just to really say thanks to our volunteers. And I think that would just help them and help them push in more towards not-for-profits to give back, because we're doing a simple thank you, but it's also helping them because they may be struggling as well.
And could I ask Ms. Conway the same thing?
There are definitely direct supports that could be provided through government as a centralized funding mechanism that would enable stronger rates of participation in volunteerism, for sure. I think that there is a way that supports participation, but also builds community in charities and nonprofits across the country.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, do I have any more time?
10 seconds.
Just if I could ask Ms. Conway, cities. Are cities involved in with your organization? Do you rely on cities? Can you partner with cities? How does cities play a role?
Definitely looking at in our new strategic plan, we're working with a municipal focus in the work that we're doing, and that's definitely an area of increased opportunity, we believe, moving forward.
Thank you, Madame Zarrillo. Ms. Ferrari, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much to our witnesses. What a powerful study, and articulate some shocking testimony coming out of here today as we study volunteerism and the crisis that is happening in our country of recruiting volunteers. If I can start with you, Mr. Moss. Your testimony today has been shocking about what you're expecting at the food bank, 100% increase in a time of historical highs in the next 4 to 5 months. But one of the things that I hear, I met with the Lions of Canada, an incredible service organization, and their average age, some of the local organizations were saying their average age is 70. And we know through recent media reports, Global News is saying seniors have to go back to work to account for the cost of living increases and the inflation. So how much has the cost of living impacted your ability to recruit volunteers?
Yeah, we're starting to see that trend. I think we've always been strong, and hopefully we remain that way in reference to how we can engage our volunteer base. But I do agree. I'm hearing more and more from our seniors. It's a subtle, like they're not really telling us boldly, but they're like, okay, I need to go back to work. We are seeing huge rises in the seniors that are accessing the food bank. And let's be honest, it's a simplistic thing. They're on a fixed income, and that income is not matching up with what inflation costs are. We're the highest in 40 years in reference to inflation. So the biggest crisis, even outside of COVID, is inflation for our people. And it is really having a deep impact, whether it's transportation or our volunteers. And so that is something that is really concerning for us. And when we have these dips, we still have to keep going with our mandate, just like any other not-for-profit. And that's where the biggest challenge is for not-for-profits. And it's something that we are seeing day in and day out. And we're really trying to maximize and connect to our base. And this is why it's critical to try to bring our younger generation into that. But they're also quite busy because they're struggling as well.
Thank you so much for that. And, you know, for those watching at home, it is the government of Canada's job, which is set by the Liberal government right now, to have fiscal responsibility. And so fiscal responsibility comes back to how money is spent. And that is what we're seeing with the highest rise of inflation in 40 years. And I want to tell people, and I'd love to hear you chime in, both of the witnesses here, one of the first areas to get hit is charities. So a lot of these service organizations rely on donations. And so I'm going to read a little blurb here from Global News. The surging cost of living doesn't just have more Canadians turning to shelters and food banks for help. It's also forcing charities themselves to do more with less, as the donors they rely on find their own budgets under pressure. So I guess I would ask you, Mr. Moss, how critical is it to have fiscal responsibility and have inflation under control so that we can ensure to recruit more volunteers, but to be able to ensure that people can donate to help the valuable organizations that you are running?
Yeah, I think in reference to the inflation piece and the crisis that we are experiencing, we are concerned. I think every food bank across the country is concerned because the numbers keep rising. And also in our situation, we are one of the provincial hubs in BC. So when we are looking at that 100% increase through Food Banks Canada and Food Banks BC, we're also shipping food out into remote areas where they're even harder hit than even in some of the urban centers. And so our concern is okay, inflation has to pull back because it's been rising over the last 4 years. And sometimes we just look at, oh, if inflation goes back 2%, but if you look at food costs, rentals, and all those things, it's probably equals to 25 to 30%. And that's the problem for the average person. And it's not like anyone really says, okay, I want to go to the food bank, but yet they realize they have no other choice. They're showing up at our door with humility, and we're saying, listen, we're going to do our best to help you.
Thank you for that. And quickly to Miss Conway, you know, you had chatted in one of your, in a recent article about critical lack of volunteers putting Canadian not-for-profit services at risk. And you talked about that number, 65%. That was a shocking number of difficulty recruiting new volunteers. And I know my own daughter who's in university, she doesn't have time to even consider this, but she would love to. And one of the things you talked about was the cost of fuel. And I think about that and we talked about that with buses, but people having to pay for the gas to get there. And you had mentioned that in your article. Do you still feel that the cost of gas is an issue in recruiting volunteers?
I think that the cost of living across the board have presented a barrier for diverse demographics. I would also say that people post-pandemic reprioritized. So older adults who have historically given a ton of time may have had to do childcare responsibilities for their grandchildren, for instance. So I do think there's a shift there that's been impactful across diverse demographics, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Ferrari. Mr. Collins for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the witnesses for their appearance today at committee. Mr. Moss, I'll start with you if I could. As a city councilor in 2017, I worked with my residents to open a food bank. My ward was about 50,000 residents in size, and I worked with volunteers to on that project to make that facility a reality. And I know that through the pandemic, it was an incredibly difficult time for our volunteers and the social agency nonprofit that we had partnered with, Mission Services here in Hamilton. And we were forced to drop our volunteer base because of the pandemic and some of the restrictions that came with the lockdowns. And we're forced to use full-time and part-time staff at Mission Services, which increased our cost. During that time, the federal government and other levels of government provided financial support to organizations to help offset some of the labor that volunteers had provided to us. I know that the Emergency Community Support Fund that was provided by the federal government through community foundations, through Food Banks Canada and others, provided tremendous support. So could you highlight for us the challenges that you faced through the pandemic with volunteers and how maybe income supports from municipal, provincial, or the federal government helped in kind of assisting you through very turbulent, rocky times?
Yeah, so I think this is our trend. I can't speak for other food banks, but the first 2 months, like we were really scrambling when COVID hit because we had to change full operations. No one's allowed in the building technically. We remained open. And then after 2 months, we realized that, and we went to Ontario Health and different places and said, volunteers is critical. So they have to be considered staff. Mm-hmm. And there was an allowance for that, but the problem was seniors were scared too. So so what happens? A lot of people lost their jobs. So the first 3 or 4 months, we were actually fine. But then after that, when people started to resume a little bit normalcy, that's when our volunteer numbers really dropped and we were scrambling. We were also appreciative of some of the interim funding because traditionally food banks never got any federal or provincial funding. Mm-hmm. It was primarily, I'm not saying they don't get it through grants or mm-hmm. those types of things. So it was helpful because it was needed in that, COVID kind of pandemic situation. I'm not trying to overstate this, but I think right now we're in a bigger crisis right now than we were before, and that's a statement. So I think when I bring this together, anything that helps us get to provide an opportunity for volunteers, and whether it's university students or right across the board, and there's any structure or funding or awareness, mm-hmm. I think it's a win for every not-for-profit. And I think sometimes not-for-profits go under the radar when they need to be put up a little bit more into the radar, no matter what not-for-profit that may be.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Russ. Dr. Conway, I've always found, as someone who's been in office for quite some time, that the exercise of matchmaking in terms of, finding the volunteer, and in this case, I'll point to our youth, and matching them with volunteer opportunities has always been a challenge for me, whether it's community cleanups that I've hosted for 20 years. How do you get them to the event? How do you advertise? I go back to the days prior to social media and the internet. And so it was the very traditional form of, letters through the neighborhoods and into local schools. And so those, even with the social media platforms that we have today and all the tools we have to communicate with youth, I still find it a challenge in terms of getting people out to, whether it's one of the food drives that I participate in, my local cleanups and other events that I host or I'm a part of. And so do you have any suggestions in terms of that matchmaking exercise, in terms of how do we connect with youth? How do we let them know that those opportunities actually exist so that we can increase our numbers with whatever volunteer opportunity we're talking about?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think engaging and asking youth to participate is mission critical. I think the work of that matchmaking is a relational activity, and that actually requires people to do that work. And people often require resourcing, infrastructure, and supports. One other thing I would flag is that we need to make sure that the ways in which we're supporting volunteerism manage risks. We also believe it's an opportunity to think about a screening platform. One of the barriers we hear people talk about is police record checks. We believe that there are other examples in other jurisdictions that are better models, like the blue card system in Australia, for example. I know myself, I might have to volunteer for the hockey. I might be a hockey coach one day, and I might go into the school the next day. I need 2 separate police checks. Those are barriers. People don't have the time. People don't have the time to be able to say, I need to do this twice. We could reduce efficiency and streamline some of those processes while still managing risk in important ways.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Madame Chabot, pour 2 minutes et demie. Madame Chabot.
Madame Chabot. Dr. Conway, we know that volunteerism exists in a number of sectors, and you talked about a crisis. I have 2 questions. Are there particular sectors where you have data to state that we are in a crisis? And secondly, when you ask for better data, what are you proposing concretely?
I know, for instance, that the child and youth sector has been hit very hard by the lack of volunteers. If you want to have someone participate in Girl Guides, for instance, in BC, there's a 2-year wait list because of lack of volunteers. That's a significant impact in terms of the quality of life for young people across the country. So child and youth services, I believe, have been hit significantly hard. I do believe that the impacts in volunteering are across sectors, and so that there isn't necessarily one or another that stands out more in the data. But I do think there's something to pay attention to in terms of the kinds of upstream interventions we want to be having and the ways in which we make it easy for people to volunteer in health, in child and youth, in recreation, arts and culture, across the board. In terms of data, I think we need to understand diverse demographic picture of volunteerism. So what does it look like if you're living in a small rural community in Saskatchewan versus if you're in downtown Toronto and Regent Park? What are the models that are going to be effective across diverse demographics and across different kinds of municipalities? Some of that data, I believe, needs to be done qualitatively in a much more fulsome picture of what effective models exist and what their high-impact practices might look like moving forward in the future. I would also say corporate Canada has a role to play, and we need to better understand baseline data that exists around employee-supported volunteerism across corporate Canada as well, and that there's a role to play in terms of data gathering there too.
Oui, mais qui peut nous les fournir, ces données?
Yes, but who would provide that data? Statistics Canada?
Way in which we could work with Statistics Canada to be doing some of that data gathering. The General Social Survey on Giving, Volunteering and Participation happens every 5 years. There may be an opportunity to be doing a bit of a research study as well through academic partners where they're doing some more qualitative data gathering. I believe that there's a way that could be done in partnership across academic institutions as well. And then working through the survey on business conditions with some more focused questions might be another opportunity to speak to charities and nonprofits specifically.
Madame.
Thank you, Madame Chabot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just the interpreter said that I was Madame Chabot, but it's Madame Zerillo. Wanted to ask Dr. Conway on the diverse communities. I wanted to just bring something in that happens in my riding of Port Moody Coquitlam is there's an organization called Immigrant Link Center Society, and it's an amazing group that has the logistics challenges of a corporation. I'm sure there's hundreds of volunteers. They serve thousands of families every single month. It is an entry point for English language learning. They work with new immigrants to the community and introduce them to the city, the organization, families, but it's a great way for language learning, and I know that's one of the aspects. I wonder if you wouldn't be able to share with us some of the reasons that people volunteer and maybe some of the reasons why they just haven't been able to continue over the last 3 or 4 years.
There's a whole broad range of reasons why people volunteer, from individual reasons to, wanting to build skills, to thinking about their own issues and cares in community and paying attention to a specific cause that might matter to them. I would say, based on your example around newcomers, we know that many newcomers gain their first Canadian experiences through volunteerism, and that while they may not be able to work immediately when they come to the country, they often are acclimatized to Canadian community through deep and supportive volunteering experiences, and that there might be an opportunity for the Government of Canada to think about a skill building program that supports a volunteer to career pathway, for example, for newcomers, but also youth. We know that youth oftentimes, through mandatory volunteer service in high school, for instance, are gaining critical skills. So I do think that there's an important skill conversation here that needs to be had, but there's also reasons relative to addressing loneliness issues or isolation issues, or just a personal something my parents did, for instance. That's often the main reason why people volunteer, is because they learned about it from their parents or their grandparents. So diverse reasons, and I think it's individually specific and context specific, but I do believe that there's ways of doing some better supportive thinking for individuals and across communities around those issues.
Great, thank you so much. And just a follow-up on that, one of the other organizations in my community, Sir Optimus, they do an awards, like a scholarship and an awards, and through that, they've also been able to bring in newcomers, to include newcomers, to create those community connections. And I wonder if you've got any examples of other activities that potentially result in volunteerism and greater connection to community.
Well,
such as an awards program or
annually, Canada celebrates National Volunteer Week, and I think that is a time when we recognize and celebrate the contributions of volunteers. It's a one-week opportunity in April where the entire country shines a light on the important contributions. I do think that that's a way, recognizing and celebrating the contributions are one way that you can recruit and retain more volunteers moving forward. So I would just flag that is an important week as well.
Thank you, Madame Zerillo. That concludes our round. Before we suspend, I want to thank you very much, Mr. Moss and Dr. Conway. Your testimony was extremely, extremely informative. I do appreciate it. So we'll suspend for 3 minutes while we transition to the next witnesses. Suspend. Well, committee members, if I could have your attention, the committee will resume with our second hour of witness testimony. I would like to welcome Shiven Kera, Treasurer of Age-Linked Society. Did I get that right? Please pronounce your name for me.
Yes, you got it right. It is Shivan Vinod Kera, yes.
Shivan Kera. And from Christina Bezons, the Chief Executive Officer, Community and Home Assistance to Seniors. Ms. Bezons, have I got it right?
Yes, thank you.
Opening statements with Mr. Kera for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, honorable members. Greetings to all of you. First of all, it's an absolute honor to be here, and I appreciate all of your ongoing efforts and work for people all across Canada and beyond. My name is Shivan Vinod Kera, and I'm representing the Age-Linked Society. I'm a former student at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, completing my graduation just last year in 2022. I'm a member of Age-Link's Board of Directors and have the honor to be the board treasurer. Age-Linked Society is a registered non-profit organization operating in the Okanagan in British Columbia. Fun fact, Age-Linked Society was actually started as a student club at UBCO in 2016 and was later registered as a non-profit organization in 2021. When I was elected vice president at the Students' Union in 2021, I myself used to work very closely with the Age-Linked Student Club. So what does the Age-Linked Society do? We promote intergenerational social connections and friendships in our community through organizing social events such as picnics, galas, board game events, trivia nights, and coffee socials. Our main membership are students and seniors. Our goal is simple: create events and invite both seniors and students so we can create a well-bonded community together. Over the years, we have successfully reached more than 200 seniors and more than 1,000 plus students in our community. Seniors volunteer their time to mentor, inspire, guide, and support students and share their wisdom, time, and stories with the students. On the other hand, students share their skills, time, stories, culture, and experience with the seniors. Both seniors and students have reported that AgeLink provides them the opportunity to enrich their social connections, improve their mental well-being, gives them joy and purpose, and broadens their life perspectives. As financial times become harder with the cost of living and individuals debate whether to attend our event or take an extra shift at work, we've received more and more regrets from members who have otherwise wished to participate in our activities or volunteer. Economic hardship has affected seniors and students alike. Personally, I know about two amazing student leaders who were heavily involved in the organization as volunteers last year, have not yet attended any of the more than 7 events we have organized this year because they're busy working and prioritizing their financial stability, justifiably so as well. Students are picking up more and more jobs given rising rent and cost of living expenses. This means that some seniors have missed the opportunity to connect and volunteer with these students. And for those who were already connected, the students might have turned down invitations to continue socializing and maintaining the intergenerational friendships. For seniors, given our interactions are very recreational, but anecdotally speaking, we know one senior that has gone back to the workforce and is seeking freelance consulting given the rising costs that he and his wife are facing. Volunteering is important and critical to the operations and thriving of organizations like the Age-Linked Society. Age-Linked Society has been able to make events barrier-free by having all our events as free admission. This has been helpful. However, volunteers are human beings with needs, and once faced with economic hardship at the individual level, they will prioritize activities that address that need over our barrier-free events which they would have otherwise wished to attend. We appreciate all the work all of you are doing and the programs and schemes you're bringing forth to tackle affordability, and we're hopeful that you will shed some light on one of the most vulnerable populations, which are students and seniors, in your plans as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kara. Now to Ms. Bezant.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to the HUMA committee. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and thank MP Van Bynen for bringing forward intergenerational volunteerism for consideration by the community. I'm the CEO of CHATS, Community and Home Assistance to Seniors, one of the largest multicultural nonprofit seniors organizations in Ontario, serving some 8,000 older adults and their caregivers in York Region and South Simcoe. Our mission is to enable seniors to have the choice to live with dignity in their own homes and communities as long as possible. We believe the power of intergenerational volunteerism is tremendous. We see the benefits every day in our work as we strive to improve the health and well-being of seniors in our communities. This discussion is timely for three reasons. First, demographic shifts in the older adult population impacts the pool of seniors who are volunteering. Second, increasing social isolation amongst older adults calls for renewed approaches to engaging both young and old and supporting seniors in the community. And finally, intergenerational volunteerism has considerable potential to address systemic ageism in our society. Seniors are an important part of Canada's volunteer workforce, but demographic changes have also impacted volunteerism. Older adults are more likely to contribute more hours on average than any other wage group, with an average of 218 hours annually. And those that do volunteer report better overall physical and emotional health and well-being. However, older adults are remaining in the labor force longer. We have seen workforce participation rates for those 65 and older more than double in the last 20 years, and this impacts their availability for volunteer activities. The potential decrease in the pool of seniors as volunteers is important because one of the most pressing issues among older adults is social isolation. Numerous studies have shown that social isolation can have significant consequences on the physical and mental health of seniors. And it's not just a matter of loneliness. It can lead to increased risk of chronic diseases, depression, and a diminished quality of life. Intergenerational volunteers bring fresh perspectives, energy, and enthusiasm that can breathe new purpose into the lives of seniors. Connecting younger generations with seniors not only fosters a sense of community, but also invaluable support and companionship. Our programs at CHATS illustrates this impact. Students have engaged in activities, meals, social interaction, and relationship building. Of note was a digital storytelling initiative that supported connections between elderly clients and youth. Prior to the pandemic, CHATS would have monthly visits from preschool-aged kids and weekly visits from students at St. Andrew's College. We partnered with 360 Kids, an organization that supports youth at risk, engaging them in preparing and serving meals to our Adult Day program clients. The pandemic did impede the in-person engagement of our young volunteers, but we're slowly gaining them back. This year, students from Pickering College have been collaborating with our clients to build birdhouses. The benefits of intergenerational volunteerism are not one-sided. Studies show that youth who engage in volunteer activities with seniors gain a greater appreciation for the wisdom and experiences of older generations. And this fosters empathy, understanding, and a stronger sense of community among our youth. This brings me to my third point, the value of intergenerational volunteerism as a way to address systemic ageism in our society. I'd like to refer you to the Government of Canada's 2022 discussion guide on ageism in Canada, which identified young people, healthcare professionals, government policies, and employers as groups most often demonstrating age-based discrimination. So it's important for us to understand these trends and adapt to strategies to engage different age groups effectively. By spending more time with older adults and providing meaningful engagement opportunities that bring the generations together, we can encourage a sense of understanding and respect between them. CHATS has recently launched a new initiative called the Volunteer Program Refresh, made possible with funding from the Government of Canada's Community Services Recovery Fund. The purpose is to create and implement a new vision and model for CHAT's volunteer program. As we build our program back to full strength following the pandemic, we're actively working on engaging a broader volunteer demographic and expanding our volunteer activities. Because of the enormous benefit from volunteers, our federal government can continue to play a crucial role in promoting and encouraging intergenerational volunteerism. And I'd like to share 3 opportunities to continue growing the area. First, through policy and funding, our government can encourage participation in programs that bring different generations together. Initiatives such as the New Horizons for Seniors program is an excellent example of the direction we must continue to pursue. But while the program rightly supports community-based projects that are designed for seniors by seniors, I believe we could also include youth-driven proposals or collaboration projects to find new models of intergenerational activity. Second, education and awareness will also foster this much-needed connectivity. The creation of Intergenerational Day provides a launch pad for numerous opportunities and engagement to raise awareness and garner support. And third, the federal government should form long-term partnerships with organizations that promote intergenerational connections. These partnerships would benefit from resources that allow for scaling, promotion, and collaboration. Intergenerational volunteerism is not just about helping others, it's about enriching our communities and ourselves. It's about learning from each other, sharing experiences, and building a stronger, more inclusive Canada. I urge each one of you to consider that intergenerational volunteerism is not just a solution, it's an investment in the well-being and vibrancy of our communities. The rewards are immeasurable, the impact profound, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bizance. So we will now open with Ms. Gray for 6 minutes, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here and for the good work that you do. My first questions are for Shivan at Age Link Society. And the unique thing about your organization, it was actually founded to connect intergenerations together, which is really unique compared to maybe to other not-for-profits. And I hear from students on campuses in my community that they're facing severe affordability challenges. And UBCO, where you said that you had gone to school, even has a food bank now to help students with food security. And you talked about cost of living challenges making it more difficult for Canadians to volunteer, and even mentioned seniors having to go back to work. So my question is, have you had to reduce services or maybe not grow them as much as you'd like with the activities that you're doing due to the lack of availability of growing your volunteer base?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've been lucky that, UBCO being a 10,000 people university, we've been able to find volunteers one way or another. But, finding volunteers has absolutely been challenging for us, given people are a lot more busy, at least as students, doing more part-time jobs. They're working more longer hours to fuel, the funding for their rent, as well as for the cost of living in general, for groceries and other things. So we've definitely seen challenges. Overall, our programs, thankfully, have gone through, and we've been able to do the events that we've had to, but it's definitely been challenging for us.
Great, thank you for those insights. Now, do you believe that if people had more disposable income, and maybe if they didn't have to have that second job or maybe take on a lot more hours just to feed themselves, that they'd be able to support more not-for-profits like yours?
I think absolutely. It will absolutely be extremely beneficial if that was the case, given once people, because, we've seen that we're an organization that's been running since 2016, at least as a student club. And we've seen the amount of volunteers that used to come to our events. And, what we're noticing is that obviously reduction in volunteers is a big problem for us. And it would be very beneficial if people had more disposable income with them so that they could come to events. Our events are barrier-free. It's just the time and just the availability that we want to seek.
Great, thank you very much. And I do want to say, again, thank you for the good work that you're doing. I did have the opportunity to actually attend one of your events and see firsthand the connection between the different generations and just how happy everyone was to be there. So I just want to thank you for the good work that you're doing. And it is important to hear testimony here at this committee, and we've had the witnesses make statements. This committee does have other work that we do as well. And so, Mr. Chair, right now I would like to move a motion. Given that the carbon tax threatens the income security of farmers, farm workers, and employment in the agriculture sector, The Senate is expected to vote on Bill C-234 to remove the carbon tax from grain drying and barn heating. Canadian farmers have called upon the Senate to pass this important legislation. Bill C-234 would save farmers $1 billion and help lower food prices for Canadians. The committee call upon senators who are delaying the passage of the legislation to stop playing political games with the livelihoods of Canadian farmers, recognize the decision of the elected House of Commons, and pass Bill C-234 into law without further delay. And so, can I continue on, or?
That you finished. Go ahead.
So part of the mandate of this committee covers income security programs. So that is the entirety of the motion. It has been circulated to the committee members.
So I've been advised by the clerk that the motion is in order. Ms. Gray, continue.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So as I was saying, this committee does deal with income security programs, and we're responsible for issues of income security that includes government policies that affect the cost affordability for Canadians, including the affordability of food. And in fact, we have had we will have bills coming to this committee dealing with food security and food costs. We know the results of increasing carbon taxes on farmers puts Canada's food security at risk and increases the food costs for all people in our communities. Removing the carbon tax from all farm fuels is important to help address this. We know that food costs for Canadians continue to rise. And in fact, some of the testimony that we heard here today already from not-for-profits talking about the costs of inflation, the costs of food, talking about the needs of not-for-profits and how volunteerism is so important to serve not-for-profits is directly within the mandate of this committee. We know that the Parliamentary Budget Officer reports farmers will pay just under $1 billion in carbon taxes between now and 2030. We know that this is increasing the cost of food for Canadians. There has been a lot reported around the costs for farmers with how much they are paying in carbon taxes. For example, we have one farmer, which is a chicken broiler business, that talked about the cost of the carbon tax to their company is $120,000 in 2022. It will be $180,000 in 2023. And once the carbon tax reaches its full amount, it will be $480,000 to that individual business. So this legislation is really important to pass so that we can start addressing the inflation and affordability crisis that Canadians are dealing with. We know as well there's other organizations that have talked about how much they're paying in carbon tax. There was a mushroom farm that had talked about paying $150,000 in carbon tax alone. And as this is increasing up again to the 2030 level, that farm will be paying over $450,000 per year in carbon taxes. This is affecting the price of food that Canadians are paying. And as I mentioned, this does directly flow into a lot of the work of this committee because we are dealt with looking at a lot of affordability issues directly affecting Canadians at this committee. Another example I want to provide is a poultry farm in Alberta had talked about the increases of their carbon taxes. We see this right across the country. I know that I've heard it from businesses in my community as well. Saskatoon Berry Farm in Alberta, their energy bills went from $12,000 a month to almost $27,000 a month. we know that we know as well that we are a exporting nation for a lot of the products that we farm here, and this is making us uncompetitive. We are exporting. The prices of our farmers are higher. The food costs are higher, and this is making us uncompetitive and less productive. And passing this legislation will help somewhat, putting our farmers on more of an equal ground than they are right now. We know as well that when we're looking at inflation, food inflation is actually considerably higher. There isn't. The thing with food inflation is that it's by each specific category of food. So there are some types of food that are up higher than others. And so we can look at turkey, for example, is up 67%. Green salads are up 33%. And so this is higher than the inflation rates that we've seen over the last couple of years. Food inflation is consistently higher than the inflation rate. Beef, pasta, fruit are also up, and we have to remember as well with inflation is that it's like compounding, but the worst kind of compounding. With investments, you want your investments to compound positively. This actually compounds negatively. So if we have inflation at roughly, somewhere over 3%, we know that food inflation is higher than that. That's on top of last year. And so where inflation might have been 8% or 10% during that month. So it's not like it's going back down to a zero level. It's actually compounding every year. And so for our farmers having to pay this onerous carbon tax, it only will keep increasing the cost of food inflation for Canadians. We've heard the finance minister herself talking about not wanting to pour fuel on the inflationary fire, and in fact, policies like increasing the carbon tax every year, in fact, does that. And so this legislation that we're calling on the government to, what we're calling on in order to pass, is one step in starting to counter that. The largest contributors to year-over-year CPI increases do include food purchases. Grocery prices rose faster than overall inflation, as I've said. Overall consumer prices have risen by 11.4% over the last 2 years. And according to Stats Canada, Canadian food prices are growing at the fastest pace in 40 years. And the carbon tax is part of that. The continual increasing of the carbon tax is increasing the cost.
Point of order,
food.
Mr. Chair. We've brought in a witness here. I'm challenging relevance here. We're trying to talk about volunteerism. We've had some excellent witnesses, and I'm just asking that you rule on the relevance and that we get on with the business of this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Van Bynen. I've been following closely. Ms. Gray's comments are relevant to the motion currently before the floor. I just want to remind witnesses, I'm not sure the timing on this. The member has the right to introduce the motion, which she has. The motion must be dealt with by the committee before we can return to the business of the committee, which was hearing testimony on the study. So I would ask for your patience until we either conclude with the motion or we reach the 1 o'clock time. But just so you're clear, Ms. Gray, so please stick to the relevancy of the motion.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that, and unfortunately, the way that the committees work is that, we have such limited time every week. We only have 2 committee meetings for a couple hours each, and we have to address a lot of different things during that time. And so this is a normal part of our committee practice, and I do appreciate the fact that we've had witnesses that have been able to give a statement. So thank you. Back to my motion here. When we're looking at the cost of food, which, as I said, directly actually flows into the study that we're even discussing right now, we've heard testimony on how there's a crisis of volunteering in Canada. And we've heard testimony here today from multiple witnesses that some of that is due to the cost of inflation and the affordability crisis that we're having in Canada. And one way to help address that is to take the carbon tax off of the farmers who are producing our food. We actually heard from a previous witness regarding the crisis in volunteering right now, and how volunteerism has decreased, and a lot of not-for-profits are having trouble finding volunteers because of inflation and because of an affordability issue, which does again tie directly into the motion that I have as one way to call to bring down the price of food. We've heard there is a number of comments that are out there being reported on where, for example, the Big Brothers of Greater Vancouver also has kids with no adult to connect with them, will no longer accept children to this mentorship program in Surrey, BC, due to a shortage of volunteers. Yes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So going back to the price specifically of food, which is what the motion is, it is a motion in order to look at one way to bring down the price of the cost of farmers producing our food. Food Banks Canada released a report saying that food banks were visited nearly 2 million times during 1 month alone, an increase of 79% from 2019. Statistics Canada published a study into food insecurity that showed that the number of families who were food insecure increased by more than 12% from 2021 to 2022. And again, the motion that I have before us is one way to look at addressing the costs of food. There is, according to Feed Ontario's annual hunger report, Ontario has seen food bank use explode, is their wording, as Canadians struggle to keep their heads above water amid skyrocketing inflation and interest rates. And between April 1st, 2022 and March 31st, 2023, over 800,000 people in Ontario alone accessed a food bank. And in total, there were 5.9 million visits to a food bank in this time period. Yep.
Security of farmers, farm workers, and employment in the agricultural sector. So could you address, your comments address the actual substance of your motion?
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the farmers themselves, we've heard that because of these carbon taxes, which I quoted earlier, in the hundreds of thousands for many of these farms, it then reduces their ability.
Mr. Chair.
It reduces their ability.
Madame
Point of order,
Zarrillo?
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Your point of
Mr.
order.
Chair, could I get some clarification? Because I understand that the motion is about influencing the Senate. It doesn't have anything to do with the content of the bill, but has to do with parliamentary influence over the Senate. So could I just get some clarification on the motion? And is it in regards to the Senate, or is it in regards to the content of the bill?
The motion you have before you, Madame Zarrillo, is correct, is that the motion, if adopted, it was asking the committee to call upon the Senate who are delaying the passage of the legislation. That is the substance of the motion. So, Ms. Gray, Mr. Rillis' intervention is correct. Please refer or contain your comments to the motion you introduced.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
And we know that.
Point of order, Mr.
So
Van Bynum, please.
the reference in this motion is with respect to delays similar to what's happening to this committee, is that correct?
Sorry, clarify.
See, the reference is the concern about the delays in the Senate. And is that not similar to what's happening now in this committee with the study that we're undertaking?
Well, certainly the committee is being delayed on its study, but Ms. Gray has the floor. I will only remind you one more time, then I'll move to keep your comments relevant to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to answer the question, this motion has been.
Keep your comments to your motion, Ms.
Okay.
Gray.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't answer the question then from the.
The question was not directed to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So this motion is to ask for what parliamentarians have voted on and have approved of in the House of Commons to move forward with that piece of legislation, which has been voted on and has been approved of by Parliament. And that's the substance of what the motion is. This is something that has been agreed to and needs to move forward in order to affect the costs of farmers, which is affecting inflation, which is again tying back to a study that we're dealing with right now with the cost of living for Canadians. And so this is this committee, even more so than probably a lot of other committees, actually deals with the substance of what that piece of legislation is that's sitting in the Senate right now, because that legislation does have to do with the affordability of Canadians. And we know that a lot of the programs that come through, either the programs or the pieces of legislation that come through this committee, have to do with income security programs.
Is in reference to farmers, not public in general, and is specific on calling in the Senate. I will not remind you again to keep your comments relevant to your motion.
Thank you.
I'll call you out of order if you stray again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, we're calling in order to pass this piece of legislation, which has passed through Parliament, in order to make it happen to bring down the cost of bring down the cost for farmers. So that's the substance of the motion. Is for this committee, which we have the absolute right to ask for. This committee can write and can ask for things to happen in Parliament, or call other groups in order to press forward on issues that are important to this committee, and that's what the substance of that motion is calling for this committee to make that request.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Next, I have Ms. Falk, then Ms. Ferrari, and then Mr. Long.
Thank you very much.
On the motion,
Chair. Oh, are you pointing
before.
your finger at me?
Yes.
I was like...
No, but I'm pointing to the committee in general. I'll hold your comments to the relevancy of the motion currently under debate, which is very specific.
For sure. Thank you. In this motion, Chair, it states that the carbon tax threatens the income security of farmers, our farm workers, and employment in the agricultural sector. And as we heard earlier today as well, that also is threatening our nonprofits and also Canadians. Ultimately, the vulnerable Canadians. We have Canadians with disabilities that this committee is purview of,
to the motion,
as well
or I'll
as
call you
seniors,
out of order.
and as well as families and workers. That is something that is in our motion. That is in the motion, that the carbon tax threatens the income security of our farmers, our farm workers, and employment in the agricultural sector. We have heard that there is an affordability crisis in this country. We heard that again today with the testimony that was brought forward. We know that when government decides to tax the farmer who grows the food, tax the trucker who ships the food, and tax the stores that sell the food, who pays for that? Canadians. And it affects the Canadians that are disabled and do have disabilities. It affects the families and the parents with young children.
I will call you out of order unless you stick to the motion as currently
Well, I
before
see myself
debate.
as sticking to the motion, Chair.
No, you are not. The
Absolutely.
motion, Ms.
Right
Falk,
in here, A, given that it is in the motion. What I'm talking about is in the motion. I see it absolutely as relevant.
Where is the given? You did not continue.
That the carbon tax threatens, it's the first line, given that A, this is in the motion.
The security of farmers, farm workers, and employment in the agricultural sector.
So in the riding that I
strayed several
represent, Chair,
times
a
beyond
lot
that.
of my farmers are families. They're parents, they're energy workers who have to work in the energy sector in order to supplement their agriculture income. This absolutely matters. We have to recognize
Point of order,
that the
Mr.
farmers
Chair.
that are the ones that
Ms.
grow our
Falk,
food.
there's a point of order been raised by Madame Zarillo. Madame Zarillo, your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I'm feeling particularly uncomfortable with this entire conversation. As a parliamentarian, I would like to raise the fact that I feel that this is a contempt of Parliament, that this motion is asking us to influence, intimidate, and block fellow parliamentarians. So I wonder if we could get a ruling on that. I'm feeling particularly uncomfortable of being involved in anything that's trying to intimidate or to put obstacles in front of the Senate.
Thank you, Ms. Zarillo. I will have to take your point of order under advisement and report back to the committee.
Point of order for me, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Coteau, your point of order.
I just want to talk about process here. We, as a committee, we agree on our schedule, how we move forward on items. And, Mr. Van Biden's study is probably, it's been put in place almost a year ago.
Mr. Coteau, Mr. Coteau, could you bring yourself to the specific point of order that you're raising? Process is not one.
Well, I was going to bring up the point that we've accommodated the Conservatives to prioritize what they would like to do, and yet, this tactic that's constantly being used to score political points and delay processes.
Thank you, Mr. Coteau. That is unfortunately that is not a point of order. I will return to Ms. Falk, and I will move to.
Chair, if I may, before you return to me.
You're calling a point of order.
Yes.
Clearly state the point of order.
The point of order. The point of order being what political points? That is totally inappropriate to make accusations like that.
Ms. Falk, that is not a point of order. So I'll return to Ms. Falk. Clearly state your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My point of order is on Ms. Zarillo's point of order with referencing intimidation, and I just want to address that. There is no one intimidating anyone here. That I'm offended by that. This is a motion, calling for the committee to do something, and there's absolutely no intimidation that's occurring here. And so I just want to address that because that was brought up here, Mr. Chair, and there's no intimidation occurring in any format.
Ms. Zarillo raised on a point of order a matter that I advised I would take under advisement and report back. I will return to Ms. Falk, and I will remind Ms. Falk, you have the floor while you're speaking to and keeping your comments relevant to the motion introduced by your colleague, Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Chair. So back to the motion, we know, and we actually, I believe we just talked about this in the House as well last week, that the Senate is expected to vote on Bill C-234, and that was to remove the carbon tax from grain drying and barn heating, which we know, as I had stated just previously, many of the farmers that I represent are also employed in other areas in order to substitute their agricultural income. And also to how many of them have families. We know farm families. So we know that the House talked about this last week, and that this would be a big deal to remove the carbon tax from grain drying and barn heating. I know I've heard from many constituents and Canadians across the country actually on how much the carbon tax is costing them. Some of our farmers are outrageous bills, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. That's just going to the carbon tax that has not reduced carbon emissions in the atmosphere and hasn't done anything for the environment, but it has hurt the pockets of Canadians. I received a note from a Canadian. His carbon tax on his Sask Energy bill, which is just the heating, is $38 a month, plus the GST that then is collected on top of that. That equals $456 a year on just the carbon tax, not including the gas used or the delivery charges or the GST that the government wants to charge on top of the tax. So Canadians are paying tax on tax. And our farmers definitely are not exempt from that. We know that farmers, but also members of the House of Commons, some of us who sit around this table even have voted for Bill C-234 to go to the Senate, and that's why it is in the Senate at this point in time. And we do know too that the Prime Minister, the Liberal Prime Minister, has appointed quote unquote independent senators, which we know are not independent. Many of them had Liberal Party memberships before their appointment to the upper chamber. And hearing the rumors that Liberal ministers are individually phone calling those ministers, or those appointed senators, to tell them not to vote for this, to hold this up, to prevent this from going further, because the Prime Minister had decided to carve out special carbon tax exemptions on home heating for those that live in certain parts of the country, mainly Atlantic Canada. And so they see that if this does pass, that there will be more holes and flaws in the carbon tax ideology, which I would agree with. We know that Bill C-234 would save farmers billions of dollars. Me coming from a rural part of Canada, I know how much our farmers are donating to the food banks, for example. When the government decides to take more out of their pocket, they have less time, they have less expendable income that they can then sow into their communities and help fellow community members. So I also know, we all know actually, that removing the carbon tax will lower the food prices for Canadians.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
As I said.
Mr. Chair, I think we're only about 10 minutes away from our normal committee meeting time. I'm wondering if we could ask these witnesses to come back at another time so that we could have a fulsome round of questions and answers for these witnesses. They've invested a lot of time. They have a lot to share with us, and all of this time is getting exhausted. I'd like us to have these witnesses back and maybe just discharge them now and set them free.
Thank you, Mr. Van Bynen. It's not my prerogative to tell them when to leave. The meeting will conclude at 1 o'clock as scheduled, and the committee can re-invite whoever it chooses. We'll now return.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Coteau, your point of order.
Can I just request that the member speaking, maybe just refer to facts, even recently she said there's rumors out there that the Prime Minister has been making phone calls.
Mr. Coteau, order.
L'interprète ne peut...
Madame Chabot.
I'm going to be very, very strict on the members sticking to, as you know, these are the rules you adopted and accepted, to stick to the motion as currently before the floor. So any member, I will advise them on 2 occasions, If they are not staying relevant, then I'll move to the next speaker on the list. But I will go to Madame Chabot. Madame Chabot, were you attempting to raise a point of order?
Oui, ça,
Well, it's just that I didn't have interpretation of MP Koto because of the sound, and it is my right to highlight that I did not receive interpretation from Mr. Koto.
Thank you, Madame Chabot. You are correct. I cannot resolve. Can the interpreters comment on Mr. Koto? Actually, I'm going to stop there because I did not rule it as relevant, Madame Chabot. So, but what I did make clear is I will follow very closely to the relevancy of the motion.
c'est Monsieur Coteau.
It was Mr. Koto.
Mr. Falk, you have the floor.
Miss, I'm a miss. Miss Falk. You called me Mr.
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Chabot,
sorry.
can you hear me? Is translation okay? You can hear? Yes. Okay. Okay, thank you. So back to what I was saying, Mr. Chair. So with Bill C-23, I believe, and I think many around this table believe that it will lower food prices, grocery prices in this country, which would make life more affordable for Canadians. And like I said, when the farmer is taxed who grows the food, and the shipper is taxed who trucks the food, and you tax the stores that sell the food, who pays for that? It's Canadians. And so I think it is fully imperative that our committee, especially with the purview that our committee deals with, which has been said with income security. We have a lot of those programs that come through this committee when we look at the 6 ministers that have a mandate through this committee, touching on families, seniors, Canadians with disabilities, and of course workers as well. I think it is imperative that we do ask those senators to come to committee and let them know how we feel about this, that it is something that shouldn't be used to play political games with, and that it should be passed in a very timely manner. And it should recognize the will of the House, which is members of Parliament are elected to this place. Senators are appointed. So I think especially when we're talking about a tax bill, the upper chamber should listen to the lower chamber, because we are elected people representing those that have elected us to be there. So I guess with that, I do want to say that it has been in precedent for us also in this committee to have either groups or CEOs or other people to
several times away from the motion. You said the committee to write to.
Which is what I'm getting to here for those senators. And I'm saying there is a precedent in this committee that we have done that, aka Air Canada. The Air Canada CEO wrote to us, said they weren't going to come. We then we moved a motion, we talked about it, and decided, no, he needs to come and be held accountable to this committee. So this is what I'm saying. There's precedent. We've done this before. I absolutely think our committee can write to those senators and ask for them to come. Thank you, Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Clearly state your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I heard Ms. Falk referring to was that to answer your question, Mr. Chair, was that this committee has called on things to happen. We have we have written to call for things to happen. So this is not an unusual request, and that's what Ms. Falk was referring to. So saying that this committee calls for things to happen is an accurate statement. We have done that before, even during this Parliament. So I just wanted to bring that up, Mr. Chair.
That is not a point of order. I'll go to Ms. Ferrari, who had the floor next. Ms. Falk, you had conceded the floor. Ms. Ferrari, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague, Ms. Gray, for putting forward this motion. And so for those who haven't been following this, so this motion is in regard to the carbon tax that threatens the income security of farmers, farm workers, and employment in the agricultural sector. The Senate is expected to vote on Bill C-234 to remove the carbon tax from grain drying and barn heating. Canadian farmers have called upon the Senate to pass this important legislation. D, Bill CT-234 would save farmers $1 billion. That's according to the PBO as well, Mr. Chair, and help lower food prices for Canadians. The committee call upon senators who are delaying the passage of this legislation to stop playing political games with the livelihoods of Canadian farmers, recognize the decision of the elected House of Commons, and pass Bill C-234 into law without further delay. So why this is important in this committee of HUMA, Mr. Chair, obviously in the House of Commons, there were 176 votes in favor, so yay votes that passed Bill 234. There were 146 voted no. Of those 176, Mr. Chair, you voted in favor of that bill. Thank you very much for that, because I know you believe in standing up for farmers and helping make life more affordable. But to that point, so then it goes to the Senate. So this is a tax bill, and we're merely just waiting for the passage of this. So for those watching, the whole point of this motion is if we can't get this bill passed and it's in the hands of the Senate, we have a major problem. And it ties into many things that we study in this committee. But to the summary of the bill, so Bill C-234, the enactment amends the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act to expand the definition of eligible farming machinery and extend the exemption for qualifying farming fuel to marketable natural gas and propane. And in regard to the motion, the member from Foothills, our colleague, has shared this numerous times in the House. He's also the critic to
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Cirillo, your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on behalf of the NDP, I just want to thank the witnesses for today and really apologize for what's happened. And I'm really sorry that we didn't get the chance to question or hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cirillo. That is not a point of order. Ms. Ferrari.
So to Mr. Barlow, the shadow minister critic to agriculture, has talked about the threat and the income security of farmers, which is pertinent to the motion. There's a chicken farmer in his riding whose carbon tax was $120,000 in 2022. It will be $180,000 in 2023. And when the tax goes up to 170 tons, it will be $480,000 in carbon tax a year. What people also don't know is that there is a tax on a tax. It is absolutely asinine when you think about these farmers who give their blood, sweat, and tears that they are taxed on a tax. There's also the mushroom farmer that we've seen making headlines in Carleton, and he has a full breakdown of his costs that people can find online, but it was $150,000 in carbon tax. That's carbon tax. That's what we are fighting for here today, and that's what this motion is about when we talk about threatening the income security of farmers, which ultimately threatens...
Ms. Ferrari, I have to interrupt. It is now 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Do I have unanimous consent to proceed?
No.
Debate on the motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned. Committee witnesses, the committee will consider, and they may choose to re-invite you.